that, but I can tell you that the Title VII, right, the Civil Rights Act, prevents employers from discriminating against certain protected classes, and that would include race and sex and religion, national origin, things of that nature. So that's going to entail not constitutional protections so much as it is federal regulations, and those acts give rise to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and there's other things like the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, which a lot of people are familiar with. There's other unions. Okay, then there's employment contracts. There's a lot of things in the private sector that are at play when you're talking about regulations of the workplace. And so if you're talking about an at-will employee, a lot of times you've got a lot harder trouble asserting some kind of case against your employer for any kind of...
Let's clarify that. At-will means I decided to agree upon their terms, basically.
It's saying I applied for a job at CEFCO and Mr. Fikes agreed that I could work at CEFCO, and then he changes his mind the next day and doesn't want me working there. That's completely acceptable for him to fire me. We have no contract. I'm at will. It's just like an at will lease rental agreement.
Same thing.
At any time, if I say I want you out of my house, I want to terminate the lease, you can get out of there. Okay, now if you have a contract though, and there's contract terms and stipulations, now you don't necessarily always have to be in writing. There are ways to make certain claims, although they're weaker if they're not. Okay, and certain contractual terms can be seen from the policy manual at work. You can go look at policy manuals, and sometimes you can interpret those.
Well, Ross, that's what I was saying. For example, if I'm employed by somebody and I got the policy manual and it says that I can't be rude or whatever, they're basically telling me I've got to watch what I say, which is my First Amendment right, but they restricted it, otherwise I can get fired. So I'm complying, I'm waiving that right. Is that is that clear what I just said, or is it muddled?
Not really, but I'll clear it up.
Okay.
All right, so I just want to be clear, and I got irked when was it Duck Dynasty, when they came out with a bunch of things they were saying, and people were like, you can't say that's against the First Amendment. The Constitution does not apply to private people. Like, so I don't. It protects private people. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it doesn't apply to anybody but government authorities. Okay, and so I shouldn't say never. Okay, but generally speaking, 99% of the time, you're not going to have a First Amendment case when you're talking about a private employer. And a private employer, I think, here would qualify. The NFL qualifies as a private employer. Okay, and a team qualifies as a private employer. So they're not going to be bound by the First Amendment. But like I said, Title VII, right? Let's say that, the First Amendment protects free speech and religion. Right? You may not directly, right, be able to prohibit, be limited. An employer may not be constitutionally prohibited from, say, preventing employees from wearing some kind of clothing. Okay, under the First Amendment, they're not going to be regulated. Okay, but under Title VII, right, if that has the effect to see as an intentional regulation that discriminates against maybe Muslims for maybe some kind of turban or headgear, okay, then Title VII's into play, and so it may not be under the constitutional protections, but it might come into play that you're violating, as an employer, you're violating Title VII. Okay, and so there are a lot of those First Amendment rights that are interwoven sort of into the Title VII policies and other state laws that would prohibit employers from discriminating against their employees. But when you ask about, I think I don't know if you've mentioned or I did, I know that that was part of your topic, maybe the NFL kneeling. I don't think that, right, the NFL is going to get involved, and obviously I haven't read their union contracts. But
I got something here that says, and they've got two books, two manuals or something on how you're supposed to act. One of them says when
he's done his research.
When the national anthem is played, the players will stand up on the sideline and acknowledge the anthem. So it says it right there.
But if anybody is fired, yes, I agree with what Trump said, that it may not be profitable because, as I've said many times on the show, the First Amendment is grounded upon the foundation of a free marketplace of ideas. Okay, and so eventually, and it's a capitalistic view, and Americans should be more happy with that legal interpretation than anything because of who we are. And that means that if a certain communication or expression has no value, then people will not buy into it. And eventually, they'll stop trying to sell it. Okay? And so if a communication is disfavored among many, among everybody, eventually that communication will die out because nobody will want to buy into it.
Because of the bottom line green dollar. I'm talking about American spirit here. I'm not talking about the profit. Oh, because we're deciding.
Well, I'm not either. I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. An idea is valuable not for its worth necessarily, although sometimes like music and lyric things like that are. But we're talking about ideas, and ideas not valuable. When I say value, what I mean is the country's attachment to it spiritually, ideologically, conceptually, in beliefs, in origin, in everything culturally, socially. What is the value of that communication? I don't mean in terms of dollars and cents. And so when I talk about the value, I'm speaking in what you're speaking of, the spiritual concept that's being put out there. That is the value of that communication, and people will stop advocating from that position eventually if it's got no value. But I think Trump escalated the NFL. I think a lot of that was not so much against the flag so much as it was kind of the middle finger at Trump to say, you want to come after one of our people, right? You're going to come after all of us. And I can see from that standpoint, you may not agree with what your brother does. I know my family doesn't agree with a lot of things I do, okay? And a lot of times I don't agree with my cousin, okay? But we stand by family, okay? And sometimes you stand by your friend. You may preach to them, right, silently, in private, tell them this is not what's happening. And at some point, you've got to cut ties. But for the most part, we try to stay loyal to those who have been loyal to us. And so I think when Trump goes after one individual, right, he's poking the wasp nest and getting them to react in a way that they want to protect the family. Okay, but I completely see the other side of the picture. And think about, when you talk about the value, think about the Army Ranger. Was it for the Steelers?
I'm not sure which one that was.
I think it was for the Steelers, but I could be wrong about the team. Dude, I had so many goosebumps when he comes out by himself, standing there like that.
And then he chickened out and backed off.
No, dude, but he's there. Oh, how strong was that? Because, and now, I think it's, look, I told you before, and I'm sorry to say this, I'm really kind of agnostic. I have more important things to worry about, right, than whether some NFL players are kneeling or not. I respect the flag and everything about it, and to that, I mean, but in terms of importance of the symbol, I think now it has more value than what it did, the national anthem and the flag, because before all this happened, you would see the videos of these guys standing in line, right, and they'd be picking their nose or talking. They wouldn't even be focused on the game, one, or the flag, or the anthem. At least now, it may not be a favorable message, but it's got everybody's attention focused on that.
It's always had everybody's attention. That's why everybody threw a fit. These guys in there are spoiled, rotten kids who are making millions of dollars, and
I don't agree. I don't disagree with that.
And they have no clue, the majority of them, as to what it takes to keep that flag on top of the pole. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of blood to keep that thing up there, and people are losing and forgetting what it took to get there. And all I'm saying is just respect the element. Here you are in a national event. People from all over the country are watching this thing, and you're going to bring your political issues into this field. This is a place of unity where everybody's having a good time, and you got to bring your stuff. I got no issues with him kneeling, Copernic, or however you say his name, kneeling for. And I ask people, why is he kneeling? Go, because whatever. They can't even give me the reason. Their lack of information. They're listening to bullet points. They're not studying. They're not getting their information to understand why they're making the decisions that they make, and that just drives me crazy. Because what's happening is, those people on national TV are letting tons and tons of kids watching it, getting influenced by people who have no clue as to what they're doing. And I'm not yelling at you. I'm just yelling.
Oh, I understand. So. I mean, I listening to Reagan gives me goosebumps as well. Okay, the things that he was saying is completely true. I think everything starts at the dinner table, and a lot of the breakdowns that we've had in society these days is because we don't have that family, familial connection at the dinner table anymore. And a lot of times we don't have an intact nucleus with a mom and a father that are there as much as we used to. And so there are underlying problems that are greater, that have greater effects to this discussion than what we even have time to even touch the tip of the iceberg on. But I think there were some things that what Reagan said that also go to the other side of the table. Okay, and that is the free will of man, terrorism and violence upon their neighbor, freedom and dignity. I think some of these things, right, are missing from society today. How much free will is there? Like we talked about, there are so many rules and laws on the books. Okay, and a lot of times it's a systemic bias. I told you time and time again, I believe that police officers are good people, and most of them are great folks. Okay, but there is a systemic bias right against minorities, and we have a Bill of Rights, okay, to protect minorities, not majorities. And so yes, the majority of people are probably going to be upset that they're taking a knee. And that's the reason that we have the Bill of Rights, is to protect those minorities, to be able to ensure that they have these expressions.
And I totally agree.
Right,
And I got no issue with them promoting that. I just have the issue of its method of application and when and where. Go on the street. You're a professional. You're making all this money. You got a spotlight. Get the cameras on you on the street or wherever. Get your own forum, but stay out of that particular venue. When it's just like this. It's like you go to a public school. They take God out of public schools. Now, me personally, I would prefer it back in because I think it's a good teaching. However, I totally dig and understand if you got Muslims or Jews or whatever in a public school and I'm cramming Christianity down your throat, I'd be a little bit pissed off too. So taking it out, I understand that concept because it's an entrapped environment. You're being influenced by certain few, and I don't think that's really good because there's a lot of things happening now, like sex education and all this kind of stuff that I'm not digging too much, but you're enclosed environment and have no control over it when your kids are getting brainwashed to thinking the way they want to make you think. It's the same way with the NFL. It's a public venue and it's affecting younger people. Do it on an outside venue.
But how, that's the way that their argument's going to be, obviously, that how are they going to get their message out as effectively? And your argument is that they don't know what they're trying to advocate for.
No, I didn't say that exactly. I said a lot of people...
They're not educated. That is what you said. I've said it more in simpler terms.
I would think Copernic, the one who started this, knows what he's doing, and he said it clearly what he's doing, and I got no issue with it. I backed him up. Police brutality exists. You don't want it to happen. So go ahead, promote it. But promote it outside the venue of NFL. That's my opinion.
Well, then you're entitled to your opinion.
I know.
And I'm going to protect your right to advocate your opinion, just like I want them to be able to do theirs. And from a private employer standpoint, I think the NFL can do whatever it wants, but as long as it's going to be able to comply with, Roger Goodell. A lot of people don't like him. I think he's done a pretty good job. He's in a really political position, okay? He's got to make so many people happy, and he's got to follow so many rules, and there's so much money involved. And we don't even know the background information and what goes on behind closed doors as far as, just contracts and trying to work with public officials and things like that are probably just outrageous to try to deal with, and nationwide too. And so that if he does something, one, it's going to give political heat to a minority group, okay? On him, there's going to be heat. But then he's going to have to contend with, if I say these people can't do this kneeling, is that going to be discrimination against a minority, since it is a minority view that is being portrayed? And it is. I don't think there's any question that they're saying it's brutality against a minority
class.
That's
why I was asking, does an employer have a right to do that?
If there's a way to get around making it discriminatory. And I think that knowing how many people in the NFL have money enough to litigate, if he does something, it's probably going to cost more money, okay, to try to get it done than to just let it go.
Here's another point I want to make. If Copernic has the right to bend this knee because that emblem on top of the flagpole that's been fought for so hard and for so many years allows him the right to do that. It's just contradictory to me that you would disrespect the emblem that allows you to do the thing you want to do, so that little bit of respect that you might have, do it in a different venue. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think from his standpoint he thinks that he's being disrespectful, but I want to say what Goodell said when they asked him was he upset by the president's words. I think this was a genius response.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, he says, "No, I'm not upset. We live in an imperfect society. A public discourse makes us strong." What else could he say?
But I
think
he's
I
right.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. We hash out this idea, we get the good ideas out there and the bad ones off. If their idea and method and manner of promoting their policy and agenda, right, is stupid and it's disrespectful and it's something that society says you don't have a right to do, right, from a societal standpoint, okay, then eventually people will stop buying into that method of the way they're communicating it, and they'll stop doing it. But so far, right, it's only, right, increased in the way that they're doing it, and the support has only. I know there's a lot of non-supporters, but the way they're doing it has been increasing, and so it seems that there are supporters buying into the idea.
And so I think that's internal, but they're going to have a backlash economically.
It's
sad that you have to change the way you do things because of economics. And I think if I review myself and everything I say, the bottom line is this: it's the disappointment. I have disappointment in those who are doing what they're doing because they don't have the upbringing or the teachings or the love of liberty and the understanding of what it takes to be free, man. It takes a lot to be free. And there's only some of us in this country that do it and put on the uniform while we do our thing and enjoy the benefits of our security through those people. And it's just respect out of them because literally you are spitting on those people. And I just think that's a disgrace. However, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. And I'm going to say freedom of speech. I wore the uniform to protect it. I see somebody burning the flag. I'm not going to do anything other than say, hey, maybe my influence can change your thought process. If you're going to kneel, maybe my influence can change your thought process. My freedom of speech is hopefully enough information with a spirit to maybe convince you to change it or study it and learn why you'd want to respect that particular emblem of peace.
Right, and you know, they find people too for advocating opinions on, like when on the cancer day, that they were supposed to everything was supposed to be focused on that. Somebody focused on a different opinion, and that was, you know, they were able to fine him substantially. So, could there be fines for, you know, time, place, and manner type of conduct? Maybe, but again, I think if they do it just to focus on this particular movement, there may be problems seen as discriminatory. And even if it's not, there'll be at least enough for an argument to launch an investigation, a litigation.
Okay, look,
case.
Here we are in a football arena, and Coca-Cola buys a 1-minute ad. Why do they buy that 1-minute ad? They try to influence you to buy their product. Mr. Copernic, spend $1 million for a minute on National Football League and promote your agenda. Outside of that, I respectfully say,
I mean, that's a really good point. But I don't think his standpoint is that. I think his standpoint is going to cost more, right? Eventually, and this may play out, like you said, it may literally come to dollars and cents because the idea becomes so repugnant that people stop literally buying into the games.
Well, they're burning.
And so it may come to that, and if that's true, then the employer is going to have a reason other than it being discriminatory.
That's an intense case. I mean, I totally dig the freedom of speech. I totally dig what they're doing. I really respect that you stand up to the conflict of people not liking your opinion, but you got the freedom to say it anyway. My beef is it has nothing to do with NFL. It has to just do with the flag and its emblem of what it represents and those who serve to protect it. So that's where ladies and gentlemen, that's where I'm coming from. Your freedom of speech, go for it, man. I fought to defend it for you, and so did so many others. Go for it. Just come on.
I will leave you with. I was going to talk about Justice Jackson and some of this.
Well, take it out. You got about 4 minutes.
But I was going to say, as far as the symbol idea, he said that symbols are primitive but effective way of communicating ideas. A person gets from a symbol the meaning he puts into it, and what is one man's comfort and inspiration is another's jest and scorn. And he was talking about the flag. In those days, in the 1930s, Nazis saluted the flag in the same way that the Americans' kids saluted the flag. The only difference being the Americans held their palm up and the Nazis held their palm down. We arrested and jailed parents of kids because they refused to salute the flag. They refused to recognize the symbol, right? And the Supreme Court said no public official, high or petty whatsoever, can compel anyone to have their own thought or ideas. And there were several policy decisions put forward, like it's a symbol of fostering national unity. And that's what Justice Jackson was saying. We get what we put into it. You're going to believe what you're going to believe, right? We can't, it's based on more than what the government can force you to do. And you can divert your eyes if you don't like the situation. Okay? And he also said that, and in those concurring opinions said, love of country must spring from willing hearts and free minds, inspired by a fair administration of wise laws enacted by the people's elected representative within the bounds of express constitutional prohibitions. These laws must, to be consistent with the First Amendment, permit the widest toleration of conflicting viewpoints consistent with a society of free men. And so we should let people get this off their chest. And yes, you can have your own opinion, but a lot of times when we lash out at other people, it only makes them lash out more. We lash out again, and all of a sudden we have a big situation. This happens on everyday private economic affairs. When I call another lawyer, I don't say, man, what the hell? Why would you do that? That doesn't get me anywhere. When we're trying to work a settlement, we don't go out and say, dude, your idea is ridiculous. You say, man, hey, we appreciate and we understand where you're coming from, man, but you know, we got to try to get to some kind of compromise here.
You said the same thing, only in a very professional manner.
Yeah, and so I see, but we don't know what's come before other than police shootings and how Kaepernick feels, and then we have Trump lashing out at them, and then we have this protectionism, right, to feel we have to protect our own sort of attitude towards that, and that's what I'm talking about.
My opinion piece stated it clearly, and that is, even though you have the right, using it at times may not always be profitable. That's all I'm saying.
I love that. I'm going to have to save that clip.
You got the right. Just use some common sense as to when to apply it.
The prosecutors are going to love that after listening to this, too. I'm gonna have to
Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to get hotter in the 11 o'clock hour, so we'll be back in a little bit, and we'll be doing our points of interest.
Just because you have a right don't mean you can be stupid. Remember Squirrel?